regard to the disappointment relates to the fact that Russia and including not only Russia but China basically didn't show up.
Seem to struggle a little bit there with remembering China. That seems to be a theme, by the way. But Russia and China account for almost 50% of global CO2 emissions. I think the number is like 44%. And they weren't there. 184 other countries show up, but they can't show up. What does this mean? What'd you make of this?
It's the tectonic shift. It's great to be with you, and thanks so much, Rob. Also, I didn't know you're a former ice hockey player like myself.
I was, but, yes.
It's another example of the tectonic shift on the global stage, right? Russia and China are dictating to America for the first time in forever their foreign policy interests and their global domination. They also weren't at the G20, right? While Joe Biden is focused on climate change, our biggest enemies, our biggest rivals, their leaders don't respect the American president enough to show up to a meeting of global leaders, because what are they busy doing? They're too busy kicking our ass in things like hypersonic glide vehicles, in currency manipulation, in border, in economic terrorism. And so we are getting our national security interests lowered on the great stage of Glasgow, Scotland now, because their leaders won't even show up. And it's just a continuation.
So so China is our number one adversary, according to many lawmakers that we have on the program here, and we're basically allowing them to be more competitive in things, just basic things like manufacturing.
Yeah, here's another example. So look, I was the chief of staff at the Department of Defense, and how we run the world is we put on these things called campaign plans, CAM plans. How are we going to take on Russia? How are we going to take on China? What are we going to do to counter Iran? Do you know what the Secretary of Defense under Joe Biden, how many campaign plans he's issued? One. He issued it 2 weeks ago. Do you know what it was on? Global climate change efforts. Our Department of Defense's only major campaign plan under the Biden administration is climate change. It's not how to counter Russia, how to counter China, our two biggest threats, how to counter Iran, the world's biggest state sponsor of terrorism, how to develop nuclear submarines, or how to beat China in space. It's on the weather.
So I heard this yesterday, and I just think it's fascinating. President Trump didn't have a great relationship with President Xi in China, or Vladimir Putin for that matter. But I don't think they were bad relationships. I think there was probably a mutual respect there. How would you evaluate President Biden's relationship, particularly as it relates to President Xi Jinping in China right now, after almost 10 months of Joe Biden in office?
No, and you hit the juxtaposition on the head. Look, at least when President Trump made the phone calls, they picked up, and they also called him. I was there when he did it.
Right.
But also, more importantly, when President Trump traveled overseas to represent America, be it the G20 or otherwise, these world leaders, Xi Jinping and Putin, always showed up. Because whether they liked him or disliked him, they had the respect, and they knew that he led America with strength. And Joe Biden is doing is Xi Jinping hasn't left China in like 20 months, and it doesn't look like Putin's ever going to meet President Joe Biden, because all they know is we are beating America with this president on the global scale, especially when it comes to national security and intelligence efforts, which is their biggest efforts against America. So they just know they can show up and there's no consequences.